So something else that you do, and I think this is a great segue about the talking stick and these children not feeling alone and trying to assimilate back in. Um, you have developed a school reentry program. Um, tell me a little about the program and how it works.
Sure. I'd love to take credit for having created this, but we have inherited this program that was actually created by some of the nurses and the psychosocial therapist at the Regional Burn Center. But it reached the point where they needed outside resources to help sustain and grow that, and that's where we stepped in and took that over. But here's how that works. A child comes into the burn center. Their clinical needs are taken care of, and they're going to survive, but they're going to have scars. They may have some dysfunction. They may still be wearing compression garments, the tight elastic garments that flatten the scars as they form so they don't become hypertrophic and cauliflower looking. They may even be wearing a face mask. Those children that wear those masks and those compression garments have to wear them 23 of 24 hours a day for sometimes multiple months, while that new skin is being formed so that it doesn't become deformed looking or less deformed looking. That child has ahead of him or her going back to school and meeting up again with children who remember them the way they used to look, not the way they look right now. And that's traumatizing. Not only for the child, but it can be traumatizing for the kids on the other end. And we understand that that transition can make or break their ability to emotionally and psychologically grow from that point on. So what we do is we have teams of the therapist and the burn care nurses who we train in this program go into the school ahead of the survivor's return. And they'll do an assembly, sometimes for the whole school, sometimes for the classes that this child will interact with, but usually including the faculty, the cafeteria workers, anyone that's going to confront that child. And they go through the process of here's what happened to Jim, or here's what happened to Sally, and here's the care they received. And they'll use some actual photographs that have been approved for use, showing the bandages, showing some of the procedures, not graphically, but to let them know what they went through. And then they'll explain, because his skin is healing, and we want it to heal as normally as possible, he's going to be wearing a plastic face mask that's going to make him look really strange. Or she's going to have compression garments on her arm and shoulder. And you're going to wonder why she never takes them off. Well, here's why, and here's what we're hoping to achieve. So we convert the environment from one of potential confrontation and hostility to one of support and nurturement. And when that child comes back in, people first of all are prepared for how they're going to look because they've seen pictures of them.
Of the actual child?
Of the actual child prior to coming back in, with their garments, with their face mask, with their scars if they're visible.
And the child knows this is going on?
Absolutely. This is all done with the permission and blessing of the parents and the child. That child comes back akin to being a celebrity. The class, the people are prepared. They have empathy now, not sympathy,
Right.
but empathy.
Right.
And they come back in and they integrate, and it's a different ball game altogether than it would be if we just sent them back in there cold. So it's a wonderfully productive program with great results. And again, our goal is not just to heal the burn, it's to heal the person so that they can be productive for the rest of their life.
The soul, the heart, the mind.
All of it.
All of it.
It's wellness.
How does social media play into this? You know, there's all kind of platforms these days, right?
Mhm.
Everything from Snapchat if you want to take a photo and send that out, to Twitter if you want to use a limited number of characters, and Facebook. And some social media platforms are, I do a good job in terms of what people can post, and if they see things that are not appropriate, they come down. But some platforms are very open. One that comes to mind is Twitter. You can pretty much say what you want to say on Twitter. Do you see social media playing either a positive or a negative in terms of these, especially children? Because, you know, kids can be, you know, putting it politely, very non-empathetic. And as you say, you know, if you want to know the truth, ask your children, because they have limited filters. And so that fosters an environment for things to be said that maybe if I confronted you face to face, I certainly wouldn't say it. But since I'm not face to face and I'm sitting here, you know, communicating with my two thumbs on a keyboard, I'm a little more, you know, aggressive in what I might tweet or post. Do you see that being a factor at all?
Well, as you've said, Dave, social media is a dual-edged sword. It's a wonderful means for educating people and getting the word out there about the availability of programs, where to find help, tell stories. And that's probably one of the most powerful things it can do, is tell people stories so they become real and identifiable to other people. On the other hand, my caution is check your sources scrupulously before you take advice on care, on even causes of injuries. Everyone is an authority on social media.
Yeah.
And everyone has their opinion, but not everyone's opinion or even experience is valuable to others as someone who really knows what they're talking about. So we maintain a full social media platform, and we put out daily posts about our programs, our the experience of the people we work with, new treatments and protocols that are being explored and developed, and that's a part of what we do we haven't talked about yet. Our promotion of advancement of scar prevention and healing through our SCAR Fund. So but know where you're going. The American Burn Association has a very robust social media platform with great information, as do we, as do a number of other organizations. For fire, one of the best is the National Fire Protection, NFPA Association. So check out your sources. But you raise a point about Twitter and how this can help or hurt. One of the things we really are seeking to find is a means of better connecting people who are traveling this journey as burn survivors, particularly children, because we only touch them maybe a couple times a year, but they're living the rest of the year kind of in a isolated environment. We'd like to put them together better. we'd like to give them an opportunity to continue that peer sharing and support on a daily basis. And I think social media or a similar type of electronic means of doing that is the best way of doing that. So I think the promise is there.
Yep.
The caution is also there.
Yeah, absolutely. You did hit on a good point, and I wanted to ask you, in your position, I'm sure that you're consulted on or have visibility to advancements in medical technology that the industry is working on, either in clinical trial or bringing new products to market for scar prevention or other things. Do you see a lot of exciting things on the horizon in terms of medical advancement?
We do, and the outcomes from those are self-evident when you look at the reduction in burn injury over time. Now, we like to take credit for all of that, but the reality is, legislatively, there have been things done that mandate reduction of risk. And to be specific, the passing of legislation to produce fire-safe cigarettes. It was a battle we fought for over 20 years, that a dropped cigarette in cushions in a sofa can smolder for hours and then in the middle of the night burst into flames. But the technology to produce those cigarettes so that after several minutes of not being actively smoked, they would self-extinguish, existed. And it was being buried by the tobacco lobby. They knew about it. We found with the Freedom of Information Act documentation that they knew about it.
Why would they bury that? I mean, I don't understand what the...
For fear that one of the most frequent causes of fire and death previously was smoking materials, for fear of being sued.
Well, can't firemen and fire chiefs that go and investigate a fire scene after the fact and determine the cause of the fire, they're pretty good at determining whether it was electrical or a cigarette or...
And they did. But what was being withheld was knowledge that these companies could cost effectively produce a cigarette that would self-extinguish and would be far less likely to produce a fire, because they were fearful that once that knowledge was out, people who were burned years ago would come back and sue them retrospectively.
Yeah.
But eventually we won that battle. And now there's a mandate that cigarettes be produced that self-extinguish. And the technology we don't need to talk about now. It's pretty easy to do that. So, that's brought about a reduction in injury, in incidents, and in fires. Because that used to be one of the leading causes of house fires, is dropped cigarettes or improperly disposed cigarettes and so forth. Not so much anymore. That's reduced significantly. So, but treatment protocols have also advanced at the same time. And there's a lot going on now with artificial coverings that get burned areas covered more quickly, which reduce infection, promote better healing, and reduce length of stay, which is all leading to better outcomes. Basically, what we're seeing now is far fewer people dying from their burns than they were 20, 30 years ago. The converse to that is we have more people surviving with scars and with the issues that scars produce. For that reason, the Burn Prevention Network decided to focus on what can we do to produce better outcomes in terms of scar formation. So we have created a research fund, our scar physiology and and Treatment Fund, Prevention and Treatment Fund. We have a number of projects that we've invested in, from different type of laser treatments and so forth, to help produce less obvious scarring, less discoloration, more normalization of skin following the healing process or as part of the healing process. And we continue to invest in those things. Those are being conducted by trained researchers and surgeons. Our head principal investigator is Dr. Sigrid Bloom Eberwein. She has international experience in research and in burn care, is a wonderful surgeon and researcher. So we're excited about where this can go.
As you mentioned, more people are surviving. There are fewer deaths now than there were from significant burns. More people are surviving. Have you and your organization had to pay closer attention to the suicide rates of these individuals, since there are more surviving significant burns? Do you see suicide going up, staying down? Have you applied more resources in that area to focus on the more survivors?
That's a very interesting question, and no, that's not an area that we currently work in, and I'm not even sure if the data is showing that problem is on the rise or not. That's something I'll look into.
Yeah. So being a 501c3 and nonprofit, you must have some fundraisers over the course of the year to fund things like your research that's going on, to fund things like education and the curriculum and the execution of education and your camp. Do you have some maybe an annual gala that occurs, or how can the people watching this that say, I really want to do something here, what can they do to get involved with you?
Okay. You're correct. We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, which means we are perpetually poor and perpetually looking for the funding to do more. And we have a pretty diversified base of activities and methods to secure funding. No, we don't do a gala. We do a very special event, though, that on the surface looks like a gala, and we call it our Valley Preferred Spirit of Courage Award Celebration. And this event typically attracts anywhere between 800 and 1,000 people each year. It's an awards dinner. The difference is we're not charging $1,000 a plate to come to it and then feting a wonderfully deserving philanthropist who's given $1 million or $3 million. We're charging less than the cost of the dinner to us because we want to attract the people that really need to be there, to honor individuals who have risked their own life to save someone else from fire. And these are uniformed and civilian individuals who have put themselves at risk when no one else was there to help save somebody or attempt to save someone from fire. And these stories are so motivational. This is my favorite night of the year, the Spirit of Courage program. Clearly, we have firefighters and police and so forth that are going above and beyond the call of duty to save someone and putting themselves at real risk to do that. But I guess the real meaningful ones for me are the postal worker who was delivering mail and saw smoke pouring out of a second store window and knew that the person living at that house was a disabled elderly man, and broke in and pulled that guy out before the whole house was enveloped in fire. Or the gentleman coming home from a hospital visit because he had emphysema, seeing the house across the street with smoke pouring out in the middle of the night, and knowing that a little child had a bedroom on the second floor, and went in there despite the fact he had serious breathing issues, had to come out because he was about to pass out because he couldn't breathe, but knew the child was still in there, and went in and found her. She was unconscious. She had soot all over her. He brought her out, handed her off to the EMS who had arrived at that point, just as her eyes opened, and she took a breath. And he describes how he felt at that moment, and how
I'm sure words can
any
describe
suffering that he endured was worth that moment when that little
Sure.
girl's eyes opened and he knew she was going to be okay.
Yeah.
These are the people that we're honoring.
Sure.
And that's why so many people come out. And that's why we want to keep the ticket price low, so that fellow firefighters and EMS workers and so forth can be there to celebrate in the heroic actions of everyday citizens.
Dan, when is the event?
It's going to be October the 1st in 2019. It'll be held in Bethlehem. Easy to find because it's a tent big enough to put a football field underneath it. It's a great event. And yes, thanks to our sponsors and underwriters, this event covers its own cost and contributes to our other activities, along with the corporate sponsorships we get, the contributions from individuals all over the place who support what we're doing, to the partnership fundings for the programs we have that go into schools and other places. That's how we fund ourselves.
And Dan, one more time, your website?
Burnprevention.org.
Okay, burnprevention.org. Well, Dan, great work, great programs. The camp has got to be so fulfilling. The school reentry program, your October event coming up, all sounds great. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.